Hi, friends. Today I'll be sharing another selection from this wonderful book, Bread and Wine, Readings for Lent and Easter. This one is called To Know the Cross. It's by Thomas Merton. It says, the Christian must not only accept suffering, he must make it holy. Nothing so easily becomes unholy as suffering. Merely accepted, suffering does nothing for our souls except perhaps to harden them. Endurance alone is no consecration. True asceticism is not a mere cult of fortitude. We can deny ourselves rigorously for the wrong reason and end up pleasing ourselves mightily with our self-denial. Suffering is consecrated to God by faith, not by faith in suffering, but by faith in God. Some of us believe in the power and the value of suffering, but such a belief is an illusion. Suffering has no power and no value of its own. He goes on to say, only the sufferings of Christ are valuable in the sight of God, who hates evil, and to him they are valuable chiefly as a sign. The death of Jesus on the cross has an infinite meaning and value, not because it is a death, but because it is a death of the Son of God. The cross of Christ says nothing of the power of suffering or of death. It speaks only of the power of him who overcame both suffering and death by rising from the grave. The wounds that evil stamped upon the flesh of Christ are to be worshipped as holy, not because they are wounds, but because they are his wounds. Nor would we worship them if he had merely died of them without rising again. For Jesus is not merely someone who once loved us enough to die for us. His love for us is the infinite love of God, which is stronger than all evil and cannot be touched by death. Suffering, therefore, can only be consecrated to God by one who believes that Jesus is not dead. And it is of the very essence of Christianity to face suffering and death, not because they are good and not because they have meaning, but because the resurrection of Jesus has robbed them of their meaning. He goes on to say, the effect suffering has upon us depends on what we love. If we only love ourselves, suffering is merely hateful. It has to be avoided at all costs. It brings out the evil that is in us, so that the one who loves only himself will commit any sin and inflict any evil on others merely in order to avoid suffering himself. Worse, if a person loves himself and learns that suffering is unavoidable, he may even come to take a perverse pleasure in suffering itself, knowing that he loves and hates himself at the same time. In any case, if we love ourselves, suffering brings out selfishness, and then, after making known what we are, drives us to make ourselves even worse than we are. If we love others and suffer for them, even without a supernatural love for other people in God, suffering can give a certain nobility and goodness. It brings out something fine in our natures and gives glory to God who made us greater than suffering. But in the end, a natural unselfishness cannot prevent suffering from destroying us along with all we love. If we love God and love others in him, we will be glad to let suffering destroy anything in us that God is pleased to let it destroy, because we know that all it destroys is unimportant. We will prefer to let the accidental trash of life be consumed by suffering in order that his glory may come out clean in everything we do. If we love God, suffering does not matter. Christ in us, his love, his passion in us, that is what we care about. Pain does not cease to be pain, but we can be glad of it because it enables Christ to suffer in us and give glory to his Father by being greater in our hearts than suffering would ever be. Amen to that. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
There's been a lot in the news lately, wars and rumors of wars. So much going on in the streets of Philadelphia. I thought I would turn to my friend Frederick Buechner and share this writing about news. When the evening news comes on, hundreds of thousands of people all over the earth are watching it on their TV screens or listening to it on their radios or on their computers. Disasters and scandals, scientific breakthroughs and crimes of passion, perpetual wars, and the perpetual search for peace. People sit there by the millions, half days by the things that go to create each particular day. Maybe they even try to make some kind of sense of it, or if they're not up to that, at least try to come to some sort of terms with it. Try to figure out how it's apt to affect them for good or for ill. There's also, of course, the news that rarely, if ever, gets into the media at all, and that is the news of each particular day of each particular one of us. That is the news we're so busy making that we seldom get around to sitting down and thinking it over. If it takes some extraordinary turn, we might, but the unextraordinary, commonplace events of each day as they come along, we tend to let slip by almost unnoticed. That is, to put it mildly, a pity. What we are letting slip by almost unnoticed are the only lives on this planet we're presumably ever going to get. We're all of us caught up in our own small wars, both hot and cold. We have our crimes of passions, our failures and successes. We make our occasional breakthroughs. God knows we are searching for peace. It's all apt to happen so quietly and on so small a scale we hardly realize it's happening. Only an unanswered letter, a phone conversation, a tone of voice, a chance meeting at the post office, an unexpected lump in the throat, laughing till we cry. But these things are what it's all about. These things are what we are all about. Maybe there's nothing on earth more important for us to do than sit down every evening and think it over. Try to figure it out if we can. At least try to come to terms with it. The news of our day. Where it is taking us, where it is taking the people we love. It is, if nothing else, a way of saying our prayers. Blessings.